stage. I'm delighted to say joining me from Saddlebrook Resort in Florida is our first guest on the show, a two-time Grand Slam champion, Gaby Dabrowski. Gabby, thanks so much for coming on and joining us. Huge honor, I'm sure, to be our first guest here on Tennis Talks Live. We'll get into your amazing career so far in just a moment, but with everything that's going on in the world at the moment with coronavirus and how it's affecting people, give us an idea of what your life as a pro tennis player has been like for the last few months and what you've been up to.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. My life, honestly, I've been very, very fortunate. Here at Saddlebrook, we've had incredible weather. I've been able to do a lot of workouts outside. We could still play tennis. So it's really kind of been a business as usual sort of situation for me. I know it's not been the same for a lot of other tennis players around the world, so I definitely consider myself lucky.
Give us an idea of what Saddlebrook's like, because it's an amazing place. My wife actually spent 2 years there playing golf. So for a sport lover, whether it's tennis, golf, other sports too, this is heaven, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Saddlebrook's kind of a gem because there are a lot of tennis academies in Florida. But in my opinion, what separates Saddlebrook and why I keep coming back year after year is it's like a sense of family. You have really good facilities. You have a ton of courts, hard court, clay court. They even have some grass courts that I've played on, although the grass plays like old school grass. It's really fast. They have beautiful swimming pools, resort, spa. They kind of have everything. And it's also like a gated community with residences as well. So yeah, I stay with my friends and they're not here right now, but it's just a beautiful place, to be honest.
And when pause was pressed, so to speak, on the tennis tour, was that where you headed straight away? It was get down there and get practicing? Because I guess at that time you didn't know how long you weren't going to be playing for.
Exactly. We weren't sure what was going to happen with the season because this would have been right after Indian Wells in early March. And I came here and I haven't yet left.
And away from that, the US Open obviously has been in the headlines a lot recently. We're due to start in less than 2 months at the end of August. Tennis, I think it's fair to say, seems to be divided. The tennis family seems to be divided about whether or not the tournament should go ahead. You've had some big names on both the men's and ladies' side, Djokovics, Nadal, Halep. They've voiced their concerns, and other players, desperate to get back on court, can't wait to get going again. Where do you stand on it?
It's definitely a sticky situation because on one hand, you want tennis to resume in the most safe possible way so that players can start earning money again and the tennis economy can kind of keep going. The trouble with tennis is that it's such a global sport. We're not like the NBA or the MLB where we're just going to be, in North America or just they can play all in one city. We don't have that luxury. So there are definitely a lot of factors to take into consideration when making a decision whether or not to go ahead with an event. And it's not just the US Open, it's the tennis tours in general from WTA, ATP, and ITF as well, and French Open. So it's a big discussion. And honestly, we get different news every day about different things in terms of coronavirus and travel and which governments are opening up their borders, which ones haven't yet. So it's like every day we hear something new. We have new information about testing, and so it's just a lot that's been going on. In terms of, top players voicing their concerns. I can definitely understand that, but at the same time, they sort of have the luxury to say that. They have the luxury to say no because they're incredibly financially stable. They don't need to play this season to make money, and a lot of players do. So I can understand both sides. I can understand safety concerns. I can understand job opportunity concerns. That's actually my biggest concern is if we do start up the tours again, how do we make sure that enough players have enough playing opportunities so that there's not a bottleneck that's created in the rankings as there already is a bit with the top 100 to the rest. So we don't want to make that even bigger than it already is. So it's just a lot.
I know. I imagine a lot to think about. One of the interesting things that came out as well was when Djokovic was speaking about the number of people that are in his entourage, the fitness trainers, the coaches, everyone else that travels with him. And that's just not the reality for most players. Give us an idea of how many people you travel with on a weekly basis?
Usually just me. There
Me?
are so yeah, I mean, I'm on a doubles player's budget, so I can't really travel with more than one person for a certain amount of time of the year. I like being alone, and I like having coaches come with me to specific events. Also, sometimes it might be a last minute decision where it's like, I'm not feeling that great. Can you come and help if it's possible? So sort of a flexible situation with me, like nobody's under contract. It's and if a fitness trainer does come like to the tournaments, usually I'm sharing him with other players, that I've trained at Saddlebrook. So there are like 5 of us for one fitness trainer. And, I never have like a team of people. It's just not possible financially. So yeah, I think I understand again that top players get very comfortable with having their big entourage and their support system. And I think that's one of the reasons that they stay at the top, is that they have this really grounded support group that's doing everything possible for them to succeed. And they're also kind of like your friends on tour as well. You probably aren't that as lonely as maybe others that are traveling alone. So I get it. It's a little bit of an insensitive comment though, because 90% of tennis players or more don't have a team around them. They just don't.
I guess with a smaller group, it makes it easier to choose where to go for dinner, because if you've got 6 or 7 people to keep happy, that can be difficult. That's enough of the tennis politics section of this show. Let's talk about you. Take us back to the beginning of your career. How did it all start in tennis for you, and where did the path to winning Grand Slam titles begin? Give us an insight.
Okay, so my beginnings into tennis were a little bit unconventional because nobody in my family played, and I'm an only child. I feel like a lot of tennis players start because their parents are coaches, or they play recreationally, or their sibling has played, and so they kind of follow along. For me, it wasn't like that at all. It was kind of random. It was a summer when I was 7 years old, and both my parents had returned to work, and obviously I'm out of school, so somebody needed to look after me, and one of my dad's best friends came over to Ottawa, Canada, where I'm from, and she kind of looked after me for the summer, and she brought her son, and so her son and I, who was a few years older, we started playing tennis at a park by my house just together. And then it was a funny sort of story. There was a man that came to the park, and he asked me where I took lessons, and I was like, I don't know, like I'm 7, I don't know even what's a lesson like. And so I go home that day and I'm like, Dad, there's a man at the park and he has a beard and he's asking where I take lessons.
I bet your dad said, stop right there.
Yeah. So my dad was like, what? But anyhow, so he came the next day when we went to the park to play, and that man was there, and they noticed like I had good hand-eye coordination. Like obviously I was already like fairly athletic even as a little kid. So I guess I got away with that going into sports early. But yeah, so this man recommended to my dad that I should be put into lessons. And so that's what we did in the fall. I started taking lessons, and it starts, very small, like 30 minutes a week. And then it's like an hour a week, and then 2 hours a week. And then you're playing like with other kids in these clinics. And then it just grows. And then all of a sudden, oh, you're good enough to play a tournament. You play local tournaments, then you play provincial tournaments, and national tournaments, and international tournaments. And it just keeps going. And yeah, and then when I was like a young teenager, I came and started traveling here at Saddlebrook, training here at Saddlebrook pretty consistently. And I was still playing juniors. And then when I was 14, started playing my first few pro tournaments, made a decision to go pro and not do college tennis. In hindsight, no idea if that was the right decision or not. I think college tennis is a great path for a tennis player as well. And then sort of late teens, early 20s, couldn't afford a coach. So it was just my dad. And then we were sort of running out of money and then started traveling on my own. Again, once you reach a certain ranking, you kind of need a coach. And I was around, 180, 200, 220, floating in that range, making Grand Slam qualies, but not really progressing. And I really felt I needed like a coach to take me to the next level, maybe a former player with a lot of tour experience, maybe even a female coach because I was very emotional, so someone who could understand me. But it just wasn't feasible. And so there kind of came a turning point then in my early 20s where it was like, well, what do I do? You know, I don't have the money to, you know, step up a level. So I might have to stop. But then, you know, I spoke with my parents a lot and other people, and they were like, well, you have a double skill set. Like your skill set is very good in doubles. So, you know, what if you pursue doubles more and put singles a bit on the back burner and see how it went? And that's pretty much what I did. I started sacrificing singles. I played more tournaments. The goal was to get to like the 250s, the international WTA tournaments, you know, climb up the rankings, be able to play with better partners, gain some respect, you know, have people know me. And then when they know you and respect you, then they want to play with you. And then you do better in bigger tournaments. And then soon I was playing all the big tournaments in the world, which is all the tennis players' goals, right? Slams, Olympics, Premier, mandatories, like Masters 1000s level. So that's kind of how it went. Yeah.
That is probably the best answer. Whenever I ask a sports person tell me about their career, that is the perfect answer. You've gone from start to where we are now. Brilliant. Where do I go from there? One question, something that I want to pick up on, you said there, you got fairly close to, you know, having to think about financially, how can I keep playing, the decision to perhaps stop playing so much singles and playing doubles. Every player I speak to in tennis always has this moment when they're playing futures or, you know, the lower levels of the tour, which I think a lot of tennis fans, unless you're a really keen tennis fan, perhaps don't know about.
Yeah.
They've got their story where they kind of sit in a hotel room or, you know, somewhere next to a court where they've just lost and they're thinking, what am I doing? And they're this close to jacking it all in and doing something else and getting a real job. Was there ever a point where you just thought, this is not for me?
Oh, I mean, there were many moments, even from when I was younger. I was like, I don't know if I should be doing this. Like, my personality, I'm not so sure is I don't know if like I love the individual likeness of tennis. I like being on a team. I like having friends. And tennis is so, for lack of a better word, selfish, because you have to be selfish in a way, not in a negative way, but you have to put yourself first, and you have to make sure that you are disciplined and you're eating all the right things and you're managing your money. And a lot of us do this on our own. Hopefully we've had good parents like I did with it, which they instilled a lot of good values in me, but not everybody is so lucky. And I think like in a way that's the beauty of tennis, are those stories that we actually don't hear about. But then when there is a turning point and somehow that player is able to figure out a way to come out of it, whether it's taking a long break, maybe doing something else for a while, coming back to the sport, maybe it's like me switching to doubles and enjoying tennis that way, whatever it may be, you know, maybe that person wasn't disciplined enough, or maybe they were able to find a sponsor finally and then pay for good coaching and just, you know, whatever it may be. I think those stories are really cool, and I wish we heard more about them, because I think that lets people know that at the end of the day, we are very human and we have very human problems, just in a tennis sort of scenario. Yeah.
You said there as well earlier on, you said you didn't come from a quote tennis family. Do you think that maybe helped you, that you had a sense of perspective? You weren't like so many players in all sports where they're almost groomed for success. Their parents are crazy about the sport and they were destined to succeed from, you know, when they were 2 years old. It sounds like you didn't have that, you know, that wasn't set up. Do you think that helped you?
Well, the thing is that even though I didn't have the background in tennis, once there was sort of the inclination of, oh, like she's pretty good at this, it became quite intense. So I would say it became as intense as somebody who was being groomed for it. That's the honest answer.
And how was it traveling? You said you traveled with your dad earlier on in your career. I think you still do sometimes, I'm sure. How was that? Did that help that you had him there, or was that sometimes difficult to have that, you know, a lot of players traveling with their coach or on their own that distance?
It has its positives and negatives, and it's different for everybody. my dad was very involved because when I started, he's a perfectionist and holds people to a very high standard. And so when he saw some tennis coaches just kind of come to the courts with a coffee in their hand, not say a whole lot for the hour, he was like, what is this? This is not acceptable. Like, I'm paying for this. This has got to be better. She's good. Like, so he took it upon himself to learn as much as he could about the game of tennis, you know, all the videos, reading all the books and the magazines and watching matches on TV, recording them, going back to this point in the set that he thought I should learn from, and rewatching it over and over and over. And so it did become very intense when I was younger, just from a sheer point of like, we don't want to waste the talent that you have. You know, we want you to have a great life. My dad comes from Poland, so for him, sport is like a gateway to a better life, you know, coming from a, still in his day, post-communist and then post-communist country, like very, very different than growing up in Canada. So he had a really unique perspective on life, and he always thought that I should follow my dreams, whatever they were. And then tennis became the dream, so it was like all in. And yeah, it's hard to travel with a parent because, you know, when a parent is also a coach, it's hard to separate being a coach and being a dad. They kind of cross over a lot, and it made me stronger as a person because I feel like I can handle anything now. Anything anybody throws at me, I can handle it. You know, I've handled with my dad, you know, a lot of encouragement, but also a lot of criticism. And both my parents were doing the very best that they could with the information that they had. And I'm grateful for the experience for sure. But, you know, I wish I could have had kind of like a blend of everything a little bit more. A blend of having my dad there, a blend of having my mom, a blend of having maybe another coach or something in the mix, just to give me a little bit of a broader perspective on life. Like, I was a very sheltered child. So when I started finally traveling on my own, I grew a lot as a person, and I finally, you know, started to have my own opinions on things and stuff like that. So it just depends. Some parents are more intense than others. Some parents are more like a coach, and some are more like a parent and you know, very soft and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I don't think I would have made it to where I am without my dad or my mom. So I don't think I could change it now, really.
You've made them very proud, I'm sure.
Thanks.
Let's talk. We're charting your climb up the rankings and climb up the ladder in professional tennis. You played your first Grand Slam main draw at Roland Garros in 2014. Was that when you really felt like you've made it? You've achieved what you set out to do?
No, not then. Not then. Yeah, when, you know, actually when was a big sort of yes, was when Shu Yifan and I won Miami in 2017. That was big because that was a bigger paycheck. It was something to fall back on. We'd beaten a lot of really good teams. And I feel like that was actually maybe a point where I was like, okay, I'm getting satisfied now. Like, this is, and I'm competing against the best in the world. This is where I want to be. I've worked hard to get here. And this is like the reward from that. Yeah.
Because I've spoken to many players who said something along those lines, that because you play so many tournaments, so many matches, particularly as doubles players, you're playing week in, week out. You're not like the top players in the game who can cherry pick their tournaments and only play the ones they really want to. You're playing, 30 tournaments a year sometimes, that you're so busy that you don't have time to really step back and think about what you're achieving and feel like you're, ticking off the goals that you set when you were a young child, wanting to be a professional tennis player. And you mentioned that moment there where you won the title in Miami and felt you ticked a box there.
Yeah, definitely. That's what tennis is for the majority of players, is you win one week, but you have to perform again the next week. And there's a lot of pressure in that system. I don't necessarily think it's the right way that tennis should be structured, because it's incredibly challenging to maintain a high level for a long period of time. We go through a lot of confidence and low confidence swings throughout the year. And I don't actually think it's very healthy for the mind and for the body. you know, if it were up to me, I would probably change it a little bit. I don't know how exactly, but I would try to shift it in a way where more players could actually have a little bit of a life. Yeah.
It's tough because the season is so long as well. You just have so little time for the off season. You know, if you're playing exhibitions and other things you have to do before the season starts, you've got what, three weeks tops, 4 weeks?
Yep, that's right.
After it was 3 years after you'd made your Grand Slam main draw debut that you lifted your first Grand Slam title, the mixed doubles at Roland Garros in 2017 with Rohan Bopanna. You've talked us through your career up to this point brilliantly. Could you talk us through that fortnight in the same way?
Yeah, I mean, we had partnered at the Australian Open, and we'd done okay. We came really close. We had match points against Sanya Mirza and Ivan Dodig, and we played them again in Paris, and we really improved. I think it might have been in the quarterfinals, actually, which was, I think, also the quarterfinals in Australia. So that was like kind of a match where we were like, all right, like, we did it, you know, we kind of got over the hump. And so that was really cool. And I mean, the thing that I've noticed in some of the mixed doubles tournaments and the 2 titles that I won is like I play a lot better, but up until the finals. Like I play really, really well, everything, first round, second round, quarter, semis. And then the first set of the finals is like nervous, tight, like too many thoughts going on. That happened in Paris, and that happened also in Australia in 2018 with Pavic. But I am proud in both of those matches, me and my partners, we were able to turn the match around. We kind of
just give us a sense. That final was a really, I mean, I was there covering the tournament. I watched it. I was on the broadcaster's point, which is the height. You feel like you're up in the gods, the highest point you can get on Philippe Chatrier, looking down. And I remember watching the match, and it was going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I think it ended on a double fault, which is not how you want a match to end, but it was thrilling to watch.
Yeah, I think they had one match point, and it was Farah serving to me. So on paper, that's like the guy is serving to the girl, they've won the match, you know, like technically on paper, that's what it should be. But he went for a body serve. He didn't go for the ace. He went for a body serve, and I got out of the way, and I hit a really strong return. And then Annalena, who was at the net, kind of popped the volley up because I'd used his pace really well. And so she kind of popped the volley up, and it went out. And so we'd saved a match point there, which was a pretty big moment. But like the super tiebreaker was crazy because at one point Farah had like something in his eye. He needed like eye drops. There was a pause, and like this is a super tiebreaker, so like every point matters. And
it was really windy, wasn't it? The dust
was windy, yes, the dust was bad, and and then a few points later, like someone's badge in the crowd was like, the sun was reflecting off of it into his eye, and I was about to serve, and he was like, wait, and I was like, oh my god, what's going on? You know, just like the rhythm was constantly interrupted, and like you said, it was just back and forth, and yeah, it sucks to win off of somebody double faulting, but at the same time, I think that kind of showed that in the end we were mentally tougher than they were on that day, or just on the last 2 points, let's say, you know.
And I suppose these are all the memories that you will keep with you. You know, all of those crazy things that happen on that day, you'll be able to dine out on those memories for a long, long time.
Yeah. I'll just quickly add to that something funny that did happen after that match. So luckily my parents were able to be there kind of on accident, and they watched the match, and my friends were there, like 2 of my good friends. And so it was like a really nice moment to like, I actually wasn't alone on that day, like how I might be somewhere else. And so after the match, I remember Simona Halep came out and was warming up on Chatrier. I don't know what round they were in. Maybe it was like before her singles quarterfinal or semifinal or something like that. And so my dad was there, and we've taken like photos with the trophy and the flowers, and then he like pulls me aside, and like we peek out onto Chatrier, and he's like, do you see how she's like hitting her forehand or something? And I was just like right now, you're gonna do that. But you know, that's kind of how we are, and that's how you get better. Like, and kind of what you said is you don't have a lot of time to even revel in that moment of being a champion on that day. It's like, oh, we still got to get better. So that was, it was kind of a cute moment with my dad there. I was like, oh, even after all this time, it's still the same. And it's still like, I know you care about, like, nobody cares about me more than you. I know that.
At least he didn't get a bucket of balls out and say, we're going to go practice that forehand. You made history that day. You became the first Canadian woman to win a Grand Slam title. Obviously a huge moment for the country in terms of tennis. At what point did you realize what you'd achieved in terms of the sport in your home country?
Well, the one thing I will say is that like doubles and mixed doubles flies under the radar a lot. So, you know, it's really not the same level of exposure as somebody would get as winning a singles title, which I accept and I don't really mind because doubles is kind of my thing. But yeah, so it's not like it was some big explosion of like, oh wow, this is like the best news ever. It wasn't really like that. It was kind of low key still. I would consider it, because doubles is a little bit low key. Trying to work on the promotion of doubles so that it could be less low key. But in time, you know, I hope that happens. Yeah, so it's just, it wasn't like a huge thing. And 2 days later, I was playing a tournament in Nottingham. So it's like such a quick turnaround to all of us. I'm playing singles qualies in Nottingham. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it wasn't really like there was much time to even enjoy that moment, to be honest. It wasn't like...
Yeah, it's what we talked about earlier on. That is the life of a tennis player, isn't it? Win or lose, you just got to move on and get on to the next tournament or practice week or whatever it is you're doing next.
Exactly.
It wasn't long. The next year, you then went to the Aussie Open. You became a multiple Grand Slam champion, winning the doubles, the mixed doubles there with Mate Pavic, as you mentioned. Did you feel that elevated your career? You were no longer a one-hit wonder in terms of Grand Slams. You were a multiple Grand Slam title winner. Was that a big deal for you?
You know, that was really cool. I'd gone through like some personal stuff that week of the Australian Open, and we had a really tough loss in the women's quarters against Vesnina and Makarova, where not that we maybe should have won that match, but we got tight and we kind of gave the match away. So it had been a really tough couple of weeks there. And in the mixed doubles, I was really proud of myself, the way that I had played, even under the circumstances. I kind of flipped a switch and I was very relaxed. I was returning really well, and I had an amazing partner by my side who was just like on a high. I mean, I don't remember the match winning streak that him and his partner were on, but they ended up winning Australian Open men's doubles, and the next day we played mixed, and then we also won. So he was like probably the most confident he's ever been in his career too. So I'd say like the stars aligned that week for both of us in a sense. Yeah, like sort of similar to French, like the first set started out very nervous, and then match went on. We gained some traction in the second set, felt that, you know, our opponents might give us a couple looks, and they did, and we took it. And then same thing, like very back and forth until the end. However, the difference for me in this final, in the super tiebreaker, is that I thought we both played really well. Like everybody was playing well. Like we were down match point, and I remember Mate saying like, I'm going T on the girl, and he's a lefty. So like normally you would probably like hook it wide, and he did the brave thing and kind of the opposite of what you would normally expect somebody to do. And he went down the tee and it was an ace. And I could see when I was at the net, I watched her move, like shift to her left, predicting that's where he would serve. And I'm like, okay, all he has to do is make it. She won't get there. And then sure enough, it was an ace. And then we switched sides at 9-all. Same thing. Instead of going slice down the tee on Rohan, he went kick out wide ace. So then it's our match point, and I'm returning to Maya Babos' serve, and I know that it's going to come to my forehand, so I kind of cheat a little. I take a step to my right, and then it comes right into my racket with good pace because she has a good serve. But you know, if you can make solid contact, then it can come back even faster. And I did, and I hit the ball past Rohan, and it was like a winner to win the match. And so like that was like such a good feeling, because one, that's a shot that I'd been working on for such a long time, and two, to make it under such pressure was like, that was the kind of moment where I was like, yes, like I can do this. And like you said, there was more confidence from having achieved that in that moment. I was like, hey, I can trust myself more now because I've done it here. I can do it again, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point about believing in yourself more and feeling like you're really established, that was, I would say, one of those moments where I was like, okay, I can trust myself now, even in a big moment.
Yeah, it's certainly a mental hurdle, isn't it? Going from winning a Grand Slam once, there's so many players who've done that, and obviously it's an amazing achievement. But to winning 2, 3, 4, that's another big step. You mentioned there about choosing partners, and I always find it interesting talking to doubles players about how they, get together with other players and choose who to play with. Sometimes it's just a text, sometimes it's simply the ranking of the player they're with to get them into the tournament. Yeah. You're obviously in a fortunate position now. I'm sure you can pick and choose who you play with a little bit more, and you've established more set partnerships. But throughout your career, how have you gone about choosing players who complement your game style?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, you're just kind of trying to get in with whoever you can get in with. You don't have a lot of wiggle room for like, oh, I think I'll play well with you, and I don't think I'll play well with you, so I'm going to play with you. Like, you don't really have those options when you're starting out. You're just trying to get into the tournament and like get your foot in the door and see if you can make some moves. But the higher your ranking gets, then you have more choice, because obviously then more people want to partner up with you, and you've been on tour longer, so you're more experienced. You kind of know what your game is and what your strengths and weaknesses are, and how to pick somebody who kind of balances that, and somebody who you really mesh with. And then also you get to know some of the players' personalities and see which one maybe, works with yours the best. So it really just depends. Like, I've played with all sorts of players. Like this year I was supposed to play mainly with Ostapenko, who's obviously like really hard hitting, baseliner, great serve, not as comfortable at the net, but will surprise you with some of the volleys that she does make, and she really takes a crack at them. So they usually don't come back, but that's a pretty unique partnership, because I am sort of the opposite of that. I love to be at the net. I love finesse and some touch shots, and I might not put the ball away the first time, but I'm setting myself up for the next one or the one after that. So it's just a little bit of a different dynamic than maybe having played with Xu Yifan for a few years, where I'd say we're a little similar in the way that we play. We both like to use the lob, we both like to come forward, hit first volleys, stuff like that. So if somebody's trying to figure out who's the best fit for them, they just have to try different options and see which one works, because there's no perfect answer. There really isn't. You just have to try and see.
Yeah, it's never easy choice to make who to play with, I'm sure. Let's look to the future now. We've kind of looked back for most of this, but let's look to the future. You've got up to number 7 in the world in doubles. You've won 2 mixed doubles titles. What are the aims for when we finally get back playing? What are the goals that you've still got left to achieve?
Well, my number 1 goal is to qualify for the Olympics. That's number 1 for me. And then number 2 is to win a Grand Slam in doubles, or mixed doubles, but doubles, because I haven't done that. And I know I have the potential. It's hard to have both players' games click at the same time, so it's a pretty tough ask. But at the same time, I'm older now and I'm more experienced, and I think, with the right preparation and if I have good confidence that week, that it's definitely possible.
You mentioned the Olympics there, and I just wanted to talk about another part of your life related to tennis, but away from the court. Yeah. Community work is a big part of what you've been up to recently. You've been elected to the WTA Player Council. You're involved with the Special Olympics. Tell us a bit more about those roles and how they came about.
Yeah, so last year, I'm not sure if you or others are familiar, but the ITF changed their entry rules. And long story short, it essentially ostracized hundreds of players from being able to play the sport. And so I started to get a lot more involved with the governance of tennis and like player issues and all these sorts of things started to come to light, and I wanted to make a difference. And then in doubles, I really wanted some more initiatives to be put forward to try to increase doubles exposure, help fans get to know doubles players better, all these different things. And the best way to really do that was to be on council, because then you have like sort of a more direct line to the people who are in positions of power to make those sorts of changes. And yeah, and so that was a goal of mine, to be able to also be a voice for the doubles players, because on WTA Council we don't have a doubles only representative like the ATP side does. You know, like somebody who just plays doubles can be elected on. For me, with WTA, it doesn't work that way. Like, it's somebody within the full member ranking group, but we don't have a slot just for doubles. So I thought it was really important for me to get on that with the other 7 girls to make sure that doubles players' needs were heard and hopefully changes so that needs were met down the line. And also, not even that, but also the ranking group I represent are the lower ranked singles players. You know, it's not the top singles players, but it's the lower ranked singles players. So a lot of players that play qualifying of WTA events as well. And sometimes they fly under the radar too. And they have other issues with per diem and prize money and stuff like that. So I wanted to make sure that their voices were also heard. And then in terms of Special Olympics, this was I guess WTA has like an arm, WTA Charities, and so they get involved in a lot of different kind of charities. And they reached out to me earlier this year to talk about unified tennis in the Special Olympics, because a lot of qualities that a double player has pertains to unified tennis and Special Olympics. You know, togetherness and teamwork and communication and all that stuff. So then I became more involved in that. And while I haven't done a lot yet, because a lot of the things that we were going to plan to do were on-site activities at tournaments with the kids there themselves, a lot has to be done now over the internet, and that's not always the easiest thing to set up. And you know, these kids, they're in their own programs and they have a lot going on too in school and stuff. So, but I have had one really good Zoom chat with kids from the Maryland chapter, and I think it's been the highlight of my 2020 so far, honestly. It brought such a smile to my face, and I could tell they were really enjoying it too. They were so engaging and interactive, and they were really excited to talk to me and then also share some of their experiences playing tennis and asking questions and trying to get better and improve. So it was really like a phenomenal experience to chat to them, and I really hope I get to do more of those in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you made their day, and on behalf of everybody, a big thumbs up. It's great for you to get involved with that, and I'm sure you're making a real difference. We've had some questions in from viewers on Facebook, so I'll go through a couple of them. Josh asks, do you have any pre-match rituals or superstitions? Now, you always get some interesting answers when you ask tennis players this. A superstitious bunch, to say the least, I think.
Yes, a lot of us are very superstitious. I'm not that superstitious. I don't like to, it might be a bad thing. Maybe I should have more superstitions, but I'm not like the most disciplined person before a match. Like, I'll go through my warm-up, but it won't be the exact same warm-up every time. I mean, in tennis, it's a little bit hard to gauge because we're not always playing at a time that we know that we're playing at. You know, we're followed by, and then if the match goes longer, then we've warmed up once, you have to warm up again. So, like, I don't have an exact sort of ritual that is the same every single time I have a match. But in general, I mean, all of us do the 30-minute on-court warm-up. We warm up our bodies in the gym, making sure that we're loose and mobile. Especially the older that we get, those warm-ups are even more important. And also, I mean, I like to listen to music, but again, it'll depend, because there's some days where I'm not feeling the music that I'm listening to, and instead I would rather just be by myself and read a book or listen to a podcast, like totally get my mind off of tennis. Like if I'm really nervous, I need to think about something else. And then sometimes if I'm maybe not as familiar with my opponents, usually I do this the night before, but if I'm still a little bit confused as to what their tendencies are, I'll watch videos of them and see if I pick up on anything. Just so I'm kind of ready, like really ready for the match, and to know their patterns, so that right from the get-go, I'd be like, okay, I kind of know what my plan is and what I'm supposed to be doing. So I don't have a set one. Like I said, might not be the best thing. I probably should have a set routine, but that's how I go.
Well, sometimes superstitions can be a curse. Whenever I ask that question, it always reminds me of Goran Ivanisevic when he won Wimbledon, saying how superstitious he was, that he showered in exactly the same cubicle, even if it wasn't available. He'd wait until that was.
Oh, wow.
He would have the same meal every single night. He would sit in the same chair, the same table. You know, he was, I mean, it worked. He won Wimbledon, right? But he was, you know, completely, the control was taken away from him in terms of the superstitions. And he said one of the things he was looking forward to getting to the end of the tournament, because he could finally eat a different meal. Yeah, there's always some good stories with that. Carrie asks on Facebook, what are your hobbies and interests outside of tennis?
I have a lot. I love to binge watch TV when I'm like really exhausted. That's probably my number one go-to. But I love to read. I love to listen to podcasts. I love discovering music. Like, you put one song into YouTube and then you end up staying there for 3 hours because you just keep clicking on the recommended songs on the side. Right now, it's not really a hobby, but I'm doing some school. I didn't, as I mentioned, I went pro and I didn't go to college, so I didn't get that university degree like a lot of players do. Actually, maybe not a lot. I'd say some players do. So I've been doing that. I started last fall, and that's been a nice kind of distraction from tennis as well. I think education is really important and something that I value, and it's not overwhelming. I can do one course a semester and just kind of get it done over the course of my tennis career, and it's not a rush, which is cool. And yeah, what else? Those are some of the main things. I don't have any hobbies like cooking or anything like that. I'm a bad cook. I'm trying to get better, but things just don't really work out the way I want them to.
The life of a traveling tennis player probably isn't is most conducive to becoming a great cook, because you stay in so many hotels and things.
Yeah,
you always have someone else cooking for you. Jessica asked, what's your favorite tournament to play?
So I think it's important to separate Grand Slams from WTAs, because there are a lot of great WTA tournaments. So out of the slams, Australian Open is my favorite, because Melbourne is a great city. You can do anything you want pretty much within 20 minutes of the tennis site. You can go to the beach, you can be downtown, you can be at the tennis, you can be in 10 different really cute neighborhoods with nice shopping and cafes and restaurants. They have really beautiful museums. I feel like the restaurants downtown are like world class. So for me, Melbourne is just like, you could put any tournament in Melbourne and that would be my favorite. But outside of the slams, there was a tournament I played in Båstad, Sweden, many years ago. And that's my favorite WTA tournament, because it's in a little sort of vacation town on the coast in Sweden, and the town increases in size by the thousands during the summer. Everybody kind of flocks there. It was really cool. The venue was right beside the hotel was right beside the venue. You had the beach, you had good food. There were 2 nightclubs also besides. So like, if you want to let off some steam, you just walk there, walk back. It was such a great atmosphere.
I remember talking to Mats Verlander about that tournament, and he said once players play it once, they always come back.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
A couple more before we let you go. From Sam, who's been your toughest opponent to play against in your career? He hasn't specified singles or doubles, so I suppose you could go through.
Singles, I mean, I haven't really played, well, psychology answer would be myself. But
your dad's nodding there. He's saying yes. Good answer.
But in singles, I don't play enough to really play the same people and kind of be like, oh, I always struggle against this person. But in doubles, I'd say the last few years, I've struggled against Barbara Strikova and Sue Shea. They're just really tough to play because they're solid from the baseline and they're very good at the net. And when they're playing well, they are very clever. They know when to bring up their energy and start being really active at the net and poaching when maybe they were a little bit passive before. So you're kind of always kept on your toes. And I haven't had very many wins against them the last several times that I've played. So I think they'd probably be my toughest opponent right now.
Nice. And just finally, Nicole asked, have you ever had a favorite tennis racket that it was really hard to give up?
Yeah.
How often do you change your racket? Because I guess with different sponsors and the models that, you know, the models change, different rackets come out.
Well, one thing I remember from when I was a teenager is I had a dampener that I refused to use any other dampener. I was like, it's not the same. It's not the same feeling. So I basically used it until it was cracked and crumbling. And then, and then one day I had one of the coaches that was working with me a little bit at Saddlebrook. He was like, you got to get rid of that thing. Like, you just got to get rid of it, because it was a Prince dampener and I was already playing with Wilson and then Babolat, but I kept this Prince dampener, you know? So that's actually one thing that was hard to let go of. And then I just never played with a dampener after that. I tossed it and I was like, okay, I'm done. And I haven't played with one since then. But in terms of rackets, I mean, different rackets have been helpful for different stages of my career. I used Prince a lot as a junior, then I used Wilson, then I used Babolat. And now I'm using Wilson again, but potentially in the process of changing. I'm kind of testing out some new frames right now. So I don't know exactly what direction I'll go in yet, but I'm leaning towards one, and I'm hoping that that this will be the best one yet.
And I guess one positive for the last few months, you know, given what's going on and having that time away from playing matches, is it has given you an opportunity to try out some new equipment, because playing so many tournaments normally, that might be a bit more of a difficult process.
Definitely. Normally I was like, I have no time. I have to wait till my off season to test rackets, where I have a few weeks of like a proper break where I can actually get a good training block in. But yeah, that's been one positive with COVID and the break, is that I have been able to try new rackets and see what I like. It's a luxury I haven't had before. So yeah, it's a cool thing.
Nice. Gabby, we've already come up to an hour. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thanks so much for coming on to talk to us, and good luck with the training and safe travels when you do eventually get back playing tournaments.
Thank you so much. It was so nice to be on.
Thank you, Gabby. So there you have it, episode 1 of Tennis Talks Live in the books. Thanks to all of you for tuning in today, wherever you are around the world. Join us next time for another deep dive into the career of a top player. Until then, it's bye for now, and stay safe.